What if the apology you are desperately waiting for is actually the very thing keeping you trapped? Have you ever noticed how the mind clings to an unfair moment, replaying it over and over like a movie that has no ending? Most of your suffering is not caused by what originally happened. It is caused by how tightly you are holding on to the hope that it will somehow be made right. If you have ever felt exhausted by an argument that is over, stuck in the memory of someone who misunderstood you, or burdened by an injustice that still feels raw and unresolved, this is for you. Stay until the end, because the final lesson may change the way you see this pain forever. You are sitting alone, perhaps trying to work, or simply trying to rest, but your mind is miles away. You are back in that exact moment. You remember what they said. You remember how it felt. And, most of all, you remember what you should have said. You want them to see how they hurt you. You want validation. You want them to finally understand and say, "You were right, and I am sorry." But days pass, maybe even years, and that closure never comes. Instead, you are left carrying the heavy weight of an unfinished story. Buddhist wisdom teaches us about the nature of attachment. Often, we think of attachment as clinging to physical things or to the people we love. But one of the deepest lessons of Buddhism is that we also attach ourselves to our pain. We cling to the idea of fairness. We hold on to the belief that if we just replay the scenario enough times in our minds, we can somehow change the past or force the universe to balance the scales. But holding on to this need for justice when the other person is unaware or unwilling to give it is exhausting. Imagine carrying a heavy, rough stone in your hands. You walk with it all day. Your arms ache, your shoulders burn, and your steps begin to slow. Someone asks you why you are carrying it, and you reply, "I am waiting for the person who gave it to me to come back and take it." But that person is long gone. They are walking freely, completely unaware of your burden. They are not coming back to take the stone. The only way to find relief is not to wait for them to realize their mistake, but to open your own hands and let the stone fall. We do this in our everyday lives constantly. A colleague takes credit for your hard work. A friend abruptly stops answering your messages. Someone you trusted betrays you and acts as if they did nothing wrong. You spend endless nights constructing the perfect argument in your head, hoping that one day they will hear it and suddenly understand your worth. You wait for an external validation that might never arrive, allowing their past actions to continue stealing your present peace. Ask yourself right now, what are you still holding on to? Who is occupying the quiet spaces of your mind? And what are you afraid will happen if you stop demanding that they understand you? Pause, breathe. Observe the memory of that unfair moment rising in your mind. See it as a dark cloud drifting across an open sky. You do not have to grab it. You do not have to pull it down and examine it. Just watch it drift by. You do not need to wait for someone else to set you free. But realizing this requires us to confront a difficult truth about the closure we so desperately seek. Because peace is not an apology that someone else hands to you. It is a door you must unlock yourself. And this is where the next truth begins. Here is a truth that is deeply uncomfortable to face. Even if you receive the exact apology you are waiting for, it might not bring you the peace you think it will. What if the closure you seek from them is actually an illusion? We constantly convince ourselves that if we just hear those few simple words that they were wrong, that they are sorry, that they see how much they hurt us, everything will instantly feel better. We think an apology will act like a magic eraser, suddenly wiping away the disrespect, the betrayal, or the sting of being overlooked. So, we wait. We draft long, emotional messages in our minds that we never send. We rehearse confrontations in the quiet of our rooms. We mentally replay the unfair moment 1,000 times, trying to figure out how to make them understand. But in doing so, we give the very person who hurt us absolute power over our emotional freedom. We put our own healing on hold, waiting for someone who may completely lack the self-awareness to ever see the damage they have caused. Buddhism reminds us that much of our suffering comes from demanding that reality be different than what it is. We suffer because we want the past to have been fair. We suffer because we want the person who wronged us to possess a level of empathy they simply do not have. When we tie our inner peace to the unpredictable actions of someone else, we are dropping our anchor into a violent storm. True non-attachment means recognizing that you cannot control their realization. It means accepting that your healing does not require their participation. Imagine a person standing in a cold, dark room. They are freezing, shivering in the center of the floor. They spend all their time staring at a heavy, locked door, waiting angrily for the person on the other side to come back and hand them a blanket. They wait for days. They pound their fists against the wood until their knuckles bruise. They feel entirely abandoned, believing that their warmth depends entirely on that door opening. What they do not realize is that inside their own pocket there is a small box of matches, and in the corner of the room there is a quiet fireplace filled with dry wood, just waiting to be lit. The warmth they so desperately need is already within their reach, but they are too rigidly focused on the locked door to turn around and see it. Think about how this pattern repeats in your own life. Perhaps you are waiting for a former boss to admit they undervalued your hard work. You might be waiting for a family member to finally take responsibility for their sharp words. Or you are seeking justice from a fractured relationship where the other person has already moved on. As long as you demand that they be the ones to validate your worth, you are staring at the locked door. You are choosing to freeze, hoping they will return with a blanket, when you have the power to create your own warmth. Ask yourself, are you waiting for warmth from someone who has already walked away? Is this expectation bringing you peace, or is it feeding your exhaustion? Stop waiting by the door. Breathe. Feel the matches in your own pocket. You do not need their validation to know that your pain was real. You do not need their apology to confirm your worth. Your truth is completely valid, even if they never acknowledge it, because giving up the demand for an apology is not about letting the other person off the hook. It is about taking yourself off the hook. It is about choosing to be warm again. But letting go of this need is incredibly difficult. The mind fiercely resists it. The mind demands that the scales be balanced. And this constant demand for fairness leads us into a quiet, hidden trap. 3. The poison of waiting for justice. What if your desire for fairness is quietly destroying your present? Here is a truth few people want to face. When we are wronged, we want the universe to immediately balance the scales. We want the person who hurt us to feel the exact same sting we felt. We want them to face consequences. We wait for karma to catch up with them, secretly hoping they will stumble so we can finally feel vindicated. We convince ourselves that we cannot truly move on until they are punished, or at least until they realize the depth of their mistake. So, you watch, you wait. You might check a former friend's life from a distance, hoping to see that they are unhappy without you. You might silently root for a toxic co-worker to fail. You might lie awake at night, wishing that the person who betrayed you finally experiences the exact same heartbreak. But Buddhist wisdom offers a stark warning about this kind of waiting. There is a profound teaching that holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the only one who gets burned. Your desire for cosmic justice does not hurt them. It does not change the past. It only binds your energy to the very person who caused your pain. You become tied to them, dragging their memory into your future. Imagine you are standing in a vast, quiet garden. The air is cool, and a gentle river flows nearby, but you cannot enjoy any of it. because your hand is clenched tightly around a glowing red-hot piece of coal. It sears your skin. It causes you immense pain. Someone asks you why you do not drop it, and you say, "I have to hold it. I am waiting for the person who hurt me to walk past so I can throw it at them." Days turn into weeks. The person never walks by. They are somewhere else, entirely unaffected by your anger. And all the while, you are standing in a beautiful garden, letting your own hand burn. Think about your own life. How much of your present joy are you sacrificing to keep that coal hot? When you replay the unfairness over and over, you are not hurting the one who ignored you or disrespected you. You are only burning yourself. You wait for a sense of justice, believing it will bring you peace. But peace and resentment cannot occupy the same space in the heart. Ask yourself, who is really suffering from this anger right now? Is the thought of their eventual realization worth the destruction of your peace today? What would happen if you simply let it go? Pause, breathe, feel the heat of that resentment rising in your chest. Acknowledge it, but do not feed it. Now, in your mind, open your hand. Let the burning coal drop to the soft earth. Watch it cool. Feel the immediate relief of empty hands. You do not have to accept what they did to drop the coal. You only have to decide that you love yourself too much to keep burning. Justice is not always loud. Sometimes true justice is simply your own refusal to suffer any longer. But letting the coal drop is only part of the journey. Because long after the anger fades, the mind will try to pull you back into the memory. It will try to make you relive the moment again and again. And this is where we must face the invisible loop of our own thoughts. 4. Recognizing the loop of suffering. What if the reason you cannot move forward is because your mind is actively choosing to walk in circles? Here is a profound contradiction in human nature. When our body is in pain, we instinctively pull away from the source of the fire. But when our mind is in pain, we dive headfirst into the flames. We obsess, we analyze, we replay the exact moment we felt belittled, abandoned, or unheard. You lie awake in the quiet hours of the night, dragging a past conversation into the present, twisting the words, examining every angle, trying to find a hidden meaning or a better defense. You convince yourself that if you just think about it enough, you will finally solve the puzzle of why they treated you that way. But overthinking is not problem solving, it is a loop of suffering. In Buddhist thought, the mind is often compared to a restless monkey, swinging from branch to branch, constantly searching for something to grasp. When we experience an unfair moment, the monkey mind latches onto the injustice. It believes that by continuously replaying the event, it is somehow protecting you from future harm. But Buddhism teaches the practice of mindfulness, the art of observing the mind without getting entangled in its webs. It reminds us that a thought is just a passing cloud. It only has power if you invite it in, sit it down, and let it take over your home. Imagine a small wooden boat caught in a swirling whirlpool at the edge of a fast-moving river. The boat spins in a continuous, tight circle, trapped by the churning water. The rower inside is panicked, pulling desperately at the oars, fighting the current, trying to force the boat back into the main stream. But the harder they fight, the more exhausted they become, and the tighter the whirlpool grips them. Finally, completely drained, they stop rowing. They lay the oars down, and in that stillness, without the chaotic thrashing, the natural flow of the river gently catches the edge of the boat, quietly pulling it out of the spin and guiding it downstream. We do this every time we wrestle with our unresolved memories. You are trying to enjoy a quiet evening, or perhaps you are focusing on a new chapter in your life. Suddenly, the memory of that person who hurt you surfaces. Instead of letting the memory drift by, you pick up the oars. You start fighting the memory. You argue with the ghost in your head. You try to force the unfairness to finally make sense. And before you know it, you are exhausted, spinning in circles, completely missing the peace of the present moment. Think about your own mind. How much of your energy is spent arguing with people who are not even in the room? Ask yourself, is this endless analysis bringing you clarity, or is it just pulling you deeper into the whirlpool? What are you trying to prove to a memory? Pause. Breathe. The next time that painful thought surfaces, do not pick up the oars, do not fight it, and do not follow it. Let the feeling rise without making it your identity. Watch it spin, and then let it drift away. You do not have to participate in every argument. You are invited to, especially the ones happening entirely inside your own head. But stepping out of the loop of thought is only the beginning, because eventually we must confront why we keep wanting someone else to write the ending to our story. And this brings us to the greatest myth of all. 5. The myth of external closure. What if the ending you are waiting for is not theirs to write? Here is a truth about closure that most of us spend a lifetime trying to avoid. The ending you are so desperately waiting for might never arrive. We are conditioned to believe that every story needs a neat, perfect resolution. When someone hurts us, walks away, or treats us unfairly, we feel like we have been left suspended in the middle of a sentence. We freeze in time, waiting for the why. We wait for a final conversation, a long message, or a chance meeting that will tie up all the loose ends. We convince ourselves that without this external closure, we cannot heal. We believe that the person who opened the wound is the only one who holds the power to close it. Buddhism teaches us the profound practice of acceptance. It reminds us that impermanence governs everything, not just how things begin, but how they end. Not everything in life will wrap up neatly. Often, things simply stop. The demand for an explanation is just another form of attachment. It is the ego insisting that the world must make sense according to our own rules. When we detach from the desperate need to know exactly why something happened, we stop fighting reality. We stop demanding that the past change its shape, and we begin to find peace in what simply is. Imagine you are reading a book you deeply care about. You turn the page, expecting the final chapter, only to find that the last few pages have been completely ripped out. There is only a jagged, uneven edge of paper left. You sit there, staring at the torn edge, refusing to close the book. You wait endlessly for the author to come back and hand you the missing pages. You refuse to read any other story. You refuse to get up from the chair. You stay trapped in that one suspended moment, demanding an ending that no longer exists. This is exactly what we do when a friend suddenly stops speaking to us, or a relationship ends without a proper goodbye, or a situation ends unjustly. You stare at the torn page of your life. You reread the previous chapters over and over, looking for hidden clues. You wait for a message that never comes. You let the person who ripped the page dictate whether or not you are allowed to put the book down and start a new one. Ask yourself, why are you handing the pen to the person who tore the page? Why do you need their permission to finish your own story? What if the lack of an explanation is actually the only explanation you need? Pause. Breathe. Look at the silence they left behind. Accept that the silence is the answer. The way they chose to leave is the closure. You do not need their words to make it final. You have the power to write the end yourself. Close the book, put it on the shelf. You do not have to completely understand someone's actions in order to heal from them. True closure is not a gift that someone else hands to you. It is a decision you make for yourself. But putting the book down requires us to examine the story we have been reading. We must look at how deeply we have tied our own identity to the pain of being wronged. And this brings us to a crucial step in letting go. 6. Detaching from the narrative. What if the story of your pain has secretly become your comfort zone? Here is a truth that requires deep honesty to face. When we are hurt deeply, we do not just feel the pain in that single moment. We begin to build a home inside it. We craft a detailed, vivid story about what they did, how unfair it was, and how completely we were wronged. We tell this story to our friends. We rehearse it silently in the mirror. We use it to explain why we are stuck, why we are angry, and why we cannot move forward. Over time, without even realizing it, the pain stops being something that happened to us. It becomes who we are. Buddhism teaches us about the illusion of the fixed self. Much of our deep suffering comes from the ego attaching itself tightly to an identity, even a painful one. We mistakenly believe that we are our emotions, our memories, and our unhealed wounds. But Buddhist wisdom gently reminds us that you are the sky, and these events are merely clouds passing through. When you cling desperately to the narrative of being wronged, you have to keep the wound open just to prove that your story is still true. Letting go is not just about forgiving them, it is about surrendering the story you have built around them. Imagine a traveler walking through a vast, quiet forest. They are wearing a thick, heavy wool cloak that is completely soaked through with freezing water. A terrible storm passed through days ago, beating down on them violently, but now the sky is clear. The sun is shining brightly, and the air is warm and golden. Yet, the traveler refuses to take off the heavy, wet cloak. They pull it tighter around their shivering shoulders, telling everyone they meet, "I must wear this, so the world knows how terrible the storm was." They are choosing to carry the freezing weight of the past directly into the warmth of the present. Think about how often we do this with our own emotional wounds. You hold on to the bitterness toward a family member because it proves you were right all along. You carry the heavy betrayal of a past relationship like a shield, letting it cast a shadow. Over every new person you meet, you repeat the story of the unfairness at work, wearing the heavy, wet cloak, so everyone knows exactly how hard your storm was. But in doing so, you are blocking out the warmth of the sun that is trying to shine on you today. You are keeping yourself cold. Ask yourself, who would you be without this story? If you woke up tomorrow and the memory of this unfair event was completely gone, how light would your shoulders feel? What are you truly afraid to lose if you stop talking about what they did to you? Pause. Breathe. Notice how tightly you are gripping the identity of being hurt. You have survived the storm. The rain has stopped. You do not need to wear the wet cloak forever to prove that the thunder was real. Let it fall from your shoulders. Step into the sun, because true freedom is not just walking away from the person who hurt you, it is walking away from the story that keeps them alive in your mind. And only when the story ends can you finally return to the only place where true peace exists. 7. Reclaiming your peace in the present. What if your mind is living in a time zone that no longer exists? Here is a truth we rarely acknowledge. When you continuously replay an unfair moment, you are abandoning the only place where you actually exist, the present moment. We surrender our today to fight battles from yesterday. You sit at a table with people you love, but you are not truly there. Your mind is miles away, back in that room, silently arguing with the person who disrespected you. You walk through a quiet space, but you cannot hear the silence because your thoughts are screaming with injustice. Without even realizing it, you are letting the ghosts of your past evict you from the reality of your present. Buddhist wisdom teaches us the profound importance of presence. It reminds us that life is not happening in our memories, nor is it happening in our imagined futures. It is only happening right now, in this single, fleeting breath. The mind is a master time traveler, constantly dragging us backward into pain or forward into fear. But mindfulness is the anchor. It is not about forcefully erasing the past. It is about recognizing that the past is entirely powerless until we decide to breathe life back into it. When we anchor ourselves in the now, the ghosts lose their grip. Imagine a clear, still lake on a calm morning. The water is a perfect mirror, reflecting the vast sky, the quiet trees, and the soft morning light. Now, imagine reaching down, picking up a heavy handful of dark mud from the bank, and throwing it violently into the center of the lake. The water ripples wildly, the reflection shatters, the mud clouds everything, and the beauty of the morning sky is lost in the murky water. We do this to our own minds, every single day. The present moment is the still lake. It is quiet. It is safe. But every time we intentionally pull up a bitter memory, every time we choose to revisit the unfairness, we are throwing mud into our own water. Think about your own life. You have a quiet morning. You pour your coffee. You have a moment of true, untouched peace. Then, an uninvited thought about that person enters your head. Instead of watching it drift by, you dive in. You throw the mud. Suddenly your heart races, your chest tightens, and your peaceful morning is ruined. But here is the deepest truth. The person who hurt you is not ruining your morning. They are not even there. Your decision to pick up the mud is ruining your morning. You are letting an event that is already over steal the time you have right now. Ask yourself, where is your mind right now? Are you physically here, but mentally trapped in a battle that ended long ago? Why are you sacrificing the only moment you truly own to feed a memory that only brings you pain? Pause, breathe, feel your feet resting on the ground. Listen to the quiet sounds in the room around you. Bring yourself back to the only time that is real. You are here. You are safe. The argument is over. Do not throw mud into your own still water. You do not have to live in the wreckage of yesterday. You have the right to claim the space you occupy right now. But fully stepping into this present moment requires one final shift in how we view the people who hurt us. And this brings us to the ultimate liberation. 8. Freedom and the final release. What if the peace you have been searching for has been quietly waiting for you to simply put the burden down? Let us return to where we began. Think about that heavy, rough stone you were carrying. Think about the apology you were waiting for, the closure you were demanding, and the quiet spaces of your mind you allowed them to occupy. For so long, you believed that freedom was something they had to hand to you. You believed that until the scales were balanced, you were trapped in the unfairness of that single moment, waiting for a realization that never came. But now you see the truth. The door was never locked from the outside. The unfairness happened. The wound was real. They may have walked away without looking back, leaving you with unanswered questions and a jagged, torn page in your story. But their inability to see your worth does not diminish your value. Their refusal to apologize does not make your pain any less valid. And their silence does not mean you have to remain suspended in the past. Buddhist wisdom brings us back to the ultimate truth of liberation. True freedom is not the absence of the storm, but the realization that you are the sky. The clouds of memory will still drift by. The ghosts of old arguments may occasionally knock on the door of your mind, but you no longer have to let them in. You no longer have to sit in the whirlpool, fighting the current with exhausted hands. You do not have to wear the heavy, wet cloak of your painful narrative just to prove to the world that the rain was real. Imagine standing at the edge of a vast ocean at sunset. The tide is gently pulling out. In your hands, you hold all the unsaid words, all the resentment, all the anger, and all the desperate searches for validation you have carried for so long. For months, maybe years, you held them tightly, against your chest, afraid that if you let them go, the injustice would somehow win. But standing there, Listening to the slow, steady rhythm of the water, you finally realize that holding on is not a victory. It is a prison. Slowly, you open your hands. You let the wind carry the ashes of what was. You watch the water wash away the heavy footprints of the past. You do not ask for an explanation. You do not demand that the ocean apologize. You simply stand in the quiet, untouched beauty of the present moment, breathing deeply, completely free. You have survived the hardest part of this journey. You have learned that true justice is reclaiming your own joy. You have learned that closure is a gift you quietly give to yourself. Ask yourself one final time, are you ready to leave them in the past? Are you ready to reclaim the quiet, still water of your own mind? Pause, breathe, let that sink in. You are not powerless. You are the quiet author of your own peace. Let the silence be the answer. Let the distance be the closure. Let your own deep self-respect be the apology you never received. If these lessons touched your heart, share this video with someone who may need a little more peace today. You can let go now.